Joining me now is someone who has been a regular guest on our radio show for this first year we've been on the air. He joins me now, Senator Rand Paul of Kentucky. Senator, it's nice to talk to you again, and especially on our one-year anniversary.
Well, congratulations, Governor. 1 year, that's pretty good. And I understand that you've gotten up to where you can speak for, 4 hours a day. When you get to 13 hours, then you talk to me, okay?
Yeah, there is a future in talk radio for you, Senator, after that filibuster. It ain't a bad gig, by the way, so you might want to just pencil that in the back of your mind. And, when you ever get sick of politics, there's hope there.
And my understanding, a radio host, you can put your feet on the desk, your feet on the neighbor's chair. You can do pretty much what you want.
Pretty much what you want. It's pretty sweet. And you get to set your own agenda. You don't have to wait for Harry Reid to bring up the topic, which that would be something I think you'd have to enjoy.
Yeah, well, right now we'd prefer he not get onto the topic, and the topic du jour is gun control, and we're quite concerned that even some on our side are waffling on this. We've got a bunch of Republicans who say, well, we don't want to hold him to a 60-vote threshold. We'll just let him get onto it with a majority vote, and I think no good comes of this. I think really we're going to get some abridgment of the Second Amendment once we get on this bill.
One of the concerns that many people have who have actually looked at some of the details of the bill is that this isn't just about having a background check to keep criminals and insane people from having a firearm, but this would put an incredible burden on a father giving a firearm to his own son, making him run a background check on his kid or to his hunting buddy.
Well, here's the thing, Governor. 77,000 people failed the background check last year. 15,000 of them were felons, and you know how many they prosecuted? 44. They prosecuted 44. So really, why don't we get them, if the president wants to do something to enforce the law that we have on the books, why don't we get the attorney general to actually do their job and prosecute the felons that they've caught? But what I keep asking is, will universal background checks and a universal gun registry, which is what they want, would that have stopped the shootings at Sandy Hook? They were done by a crazed young man who stole the guns that he used in the crime. So really nothing that they're proposing would have saved these lives. And I have a lot of sympathy. I mean, I have 3 boys, and I can't imagine them being shot at school, and I can't imagine this tragedy. I don't think anybody can imagine the pain of these families. But it's just window dressing to trot things out and say, oh, we're going to do this, when in reality it wouldn't have saved any of their lives.
I think that's the hard part for a lot of people to cope with, is that we all feel this enormous amount of sympathy for the parents. I mean, you're right. As a parent, I can't think of anything that would just devastate me, is that, you drop your kid off at school and you think all is well, and then you get a call and you find out that he's dead because somebody shot him at his protected place of school. But you point out that the shooter in that case didn't have a background check, even though Connecticut has some of the strictest gun control laws, because he stole the weapons. And one normally doesn't get a background check to say, hey, I'm going to steal some guns today, even if it's from my own mother, but could you run a background check on me before I do that?
Well, and here's the other thing about gun violence and violence in general that people don't really quite understand. If you kill someone, there's a huge legal deterrent to that. You can be put to death, or you can be put in life in prison for killing someone with a gun, a knife, or with your fists. And so there already is a great legal impediment, but the people doing the shooting are undeterred by life in prison or death penalty. We think somehow that, giving them a year in prison for having an unregistered firearm is going to stop them, when laws against murder are not stopping them. So it's really just this falsehood, but in the end, the people who get caught up in it are the law-abiding citizens. It makes guns more expensive for the poor. It makes them harder to obtain for those who live in crime-ridden neighborhoods for self-defense. And I just don't see any good come of this, and I really think the Bill of Rights is important enough that you ought to have a 60-vote margin. So we've been lobbying our Republican colleagues. If we had 41 Republican colleagues in the Senate, we could stop this bill and stop this tragedy from occurring.
Harry Reid has been very, very critical of the efforts that you and 12 other senators so far have said you would engage in, and that's to filibuster this bill. And he said just put it up there and have a vote on it. John McCain, one of the Republicans, has also weighed in on that and said, yeah, let's just have a vote. What's wrong with having a vote? Why isn't that a good idea.
We will have a vote. See, that's the sort of fallacy of the whole debate is we can't stop them from voting. There will be a vote on whether to proceed to this. All we can do is procedurally ask them to get 60 votes to proceed to this. But we can't stop it unless we are able to get 41 votes. But right now we're not even getting enough Republicans, it looks like, to stop going on to this bill because a lot of Republicans are like, oh, well, maybe we should vote on it. The problem is Harry Reid has filibustered 90% of the bills that come forward. He fills up the amendments and doesn't allow any amendments unless he hand selects the amendments. So the one amendment he's going to let happen is a ban on guns, a ban on what they call assault weapons. And so that will be one of the votes. Do you think he's going to allow an amendment that I have to allow people to have concealed carry, to allow teachers to have a concealed carry or principals to have guns and get rid of this nonsense of gun-free zones where everybody's without self-defense? My guess is he's not going to allow that amendment.
Senator, how many of your fellow senators know the contents of this bill and know how really ominous it would be to just traditional fathers wanting to hand guns down to their children or maybe even loan one to a hunting buddy?
We know that there are 2 or 3 bills that have passed the committee, and the rumor has it around here that those are going to be put together and will form the basis of what the underlying bill will be. But see, that's the other reason they play games. They want us to allow them to have the motion to proceed to this bill, but they're not really telling us what they want to stick in it. The real meat of the bill will come after we've already had the motion to proceed to the bill. They'll stick that on, so there'll be an amendment that really replaces the underlying bill. The amendment could be the Feinstein Amendment to ban certain types of guns. The amendment could be universal gun registration and a data bank to control people. We know one of the underlying bills said that if a gun is stolen from your house and you do not file a report within 24 hours, that you would be a convicted felon. So can you imagine having 10 guns in your gun closet and one of them's missing maybe for 6 months and you just haven't noticed? You're now a felon. That's part of one of the underlying bills that he wants to pass is that if someone steals a gun from you and you don't report it, that you're now the felon.
That kind of thing I think is what scares a lot of people who are responsible and legitimate gun owners. But there's really a question, could the Democrats get enough votes to pass this? I mean, there's some Democrats that if they vote for gun control measures and they're up for re-election in their states next year, they might as well go ahead and get some boxes and start packing them up.
Well, that's why we've argued to have one up or down vote on whether the motion to proceed and make that a 60-vote margin, because then the Democrats who say they're pro-gun will have to put up or shut up on this. And if they vote to proceed to this bill that will allow for an assault weapons ban, that really is the vote. That's the most important vote. Really, the votes on the amendments are important, but whether or not you proceed to this bill at all, this bill becomes a vehicle for a lot of bad things that could infringe on the Second Amendment.
You've got 13 senators. Do you think some others are going to tip your way on the Republican side before this is over?
I think so. I think that they are hearing from people, and if your listeners will call their Republican senators and tell them that they don't want to have a vote on the banning certain types of rifles, I think if your listeners were to call the Republican senators and put a lot of pressure on them, I think that we'll get more votes. I don't know if in the end we can prevail, but it takes 41. There are 45 Republicans, and there's 5 or 6 Democrats from conservative states in the South. And so if they all got called, the conservative Democrats, from Arkansas and out west, if they were called, I think there could be some pressure weighed in on them and we could potentially defeat it. But it would require more Republican support. There's a lot of wavering on the Republican side, which I don't quite understand because almost all votes around here require a 60-vote margin, and they're willing to do it on fairly trivial matters and not willing to do it when it affects the Bill of Rights, which I find disconcerting.
Well, Senator, it's always a pleasure to visit with you, and thanks for joining us. I want to just encourage you, stay the fight. We need you. Appreciate your being here. Senator Rand Paul of Kentucky joining us.